Welcome, everybody. If this is one of your first calls with us, you might not be familiar with this term. If you've been coming to our Saturday schools or our national calls or participating in our organizing for a while, you might be familiar with this term mística, which is a term we borrow from the Brazilian landless workers movement, sometimes called abbreviated as the MST. The MST is the largest movement of the organized poor in the Western Hemisphere, with around 1.5 million members. We learn a lot from the MST. It influences a whole lot of what we do in our organizing. And this is rooted in the cultural conditions of our movement siblings in Brazil. Mística is their practice of capturing what we call the spirit of the struggle, the lessons, the hardships, the feelings of the historical and contemporary struggles for human rights and liberation, often, though not always, expressed through song, poetry, dance, chants, ritual, art, and theater. Even though here we're limited through a digital medium, mística is something we are defining together. It's a growing practice in our organizing. And one of the most important aspects of mística is how we use it is to build the collective identity of the working class as a whole. So we're going to watch a few minutes of a video from last year's Nonviolent Medicaid Army National Day of Action. Just a few minutes that includes a little bit of the press coverage that we garnered, as well as speakers and images from across the country. As you're watching, I want to encourage you to pay close attention to the consistency through which our leaders are expressing their plight, the fight, the insights of not only their own individual stories, but of the entire poor and working class. And consider how we can bring those insights, that analysis, into our work with journalists and the press. Nicholson, you can go ahead and hit that video.
Fight, fight, fight! Healthcare is a human right!
A dozen states rallying to demand an end to Medicaid cutoffs. The protest organized by the Nonviolent Medicaid Army.
If we can unify, we can create a movement of poor and working class people, and we can change the system.
We are taking action together as the National Nonviolent Medicaid Army.
I didn't fall through the cracks. I was pushed by systems that ration care, criminalize need, and treat survival as a privilege.
We will not die in silence. That's what this day is about.
Went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. Took it back. Took back my dignity. Took it back. Took back my humanity. Now it's under my feet. Under my feet. Under my feet. Under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me.
We are taking action together as the National Nonviolent Medicaid Army in more than 10 states across the South, Midwest, Appalachia, and the Northeast to declare Medicaid cuts equals policy murder.
Medicaid cuts equal policy murder.
Policy murder.
Policy murder.
Policy murder.
Policy murder.
Medicaid cuts are policy murder.
Who is the Nonviolent Medicaid Army? Those who are on or unfairly excluded from Medicaid.
So we say the change begins with the telling of untold stories.
I'm one of those that gets $23 a month in food stamps. I worked 35 years to be treated like a piece of shit.
This year alone, I've been rushed to the hospital for 4 different times for 4 emergencies. If it wasn't for Medicaid, I would be drowning in bills bigger than my future.
So I can choose to have health insurance and have no money, or have money and no health insurance.
If you're sick, it's not your fault. If you're poor, it's not your fault.
I've spent most of my life too poor to afford care. When I was laid off in the pandemic, I was able to get on Medicaid, and that was the first time in my life I was able to see a doctor on a regular basis.
The worst part of my job every day was when a mom would come to me and she would say,
hi, I'm here to pick up medicine for my son or daughter so-and-so. You know, I need to pick up their emergency inhaler. I need to pick up my daughter's EpiPen. And I always had to be the one to tell them, I'm so sorry, but your insurance won't cover it. I hope your kid doesn't die. They don't want to pay for you to live. They don't want to pay for your kids to live. And they damn well want to pay even less by letting AI tell you that you can go die.
Thanks, Nick. I'm going to pass it to Clarissa to go over our goals and agenda for the evening.
Hi, everyone. I'm Clarissa, part of the New York City Nonviolent Medicaid Army, use she, her pronouns, and I'm going to review the goals for our call. We're going to define what we mean by earned media and why it's important for us to develop our press skills, develop an understanding of how to build a press list and cultivate relationships with journalists, help us feel more confident in how to get press coverage, and prepare ourselves to carry out press work for the 2026 NVMA Day of Action. And for our agenda, we're reviewing our goals and the agenda right now, then we'll move on to framing, building the press list, building relationships, using New York as a case study, and then we'll end by doing some breakouts and debrief, and then finish with some next steps in closing. And I'll pass it to Scott.
The Nonviolent Medicaid Army Community Agreements. The Platinum Rule. Treat others the way they want you to be treated, not just the way you want to be treated. One mic. Only one person should speak at a time. Assume positive intent and take care of impact. Not everyone comes in with the same set of experiences and knowledge, so assume that people have good intent. Also be accountable for the impact of your actions and words as well. Move up, move back. If you feel you are speaking a lot, make space for others to speak. And if you find yourself not talking, try to contribute some comments, ideas, and suggestions. Respect each other's time. Please come back on time from breaks and refrain from speaking in long monologues. No one knows everything. Together, we know a lot. This agreement asks that we all practice being humble and look for what we have to learn from each other, each person in the room. It asks us to share what we know as well as our questions so that others may learn from us. We are all responsible for the success of the space. In contrast to how we experience ruling class education as a product to be consumed, we believe that everyone has the ability to learn and to teach. We expect all members to take an active role in the success of the gathering. Everyone is valuable. Supporting each other and creating the conditions for each person to engage and contribute as fully as possible is an essential step toward creating the organization and building the power we need to change this system. We come from all different backgrounds and abilities, which is a strength. Pacing and visual descriptions. When facilitating a slide with images, please describe the image, making a strong effort to speak slowly and clearly throughout. Participants, please speak up if you need a facilitator to speak louder or slow down. What one person needs, others also benefit from. All NVMA events are drug and alcohol-free or substance-free spaces. We respect the needs of members in recovery or who otherwise may not be able to be in the presence of drugs or alcohol. Members should not be intoxicated or using substances while participating in NVMA spaces, virtually over Zoom or in person.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Michelle, and I'm part of United Workers, and I'll provide everyone a grounding in who we are, who is our base, and why we organize. So on this slide, you see Joy from Pennsylvania, a picture of her. The Nonviolent Medicaid Army of the Poor is a growing, politically independent force of the poor and dispossessed, united across identities, regions, races, and issues, modeled after MLK's Nonviolent Army of the Poor from the Poor People's Campaign of 1968. And on this slide, you see Lamont from New York. Those who are on or excluded from Medicaid represent the diversity of the entire working class and are impacted by every single front of struggle: housing, living wages, food, education, debt, migration, incarceration. The fight for Medicaid is common to the North and the South. And in this last slide, you see Melissa Peterson from Maryland. Being on or excluded from Medicaid objectively unites a huge section of the leading social force, the group of people that has the most to gain and the least to lose from a fundamental transformation of society. And I'm going to pass it on to Kelly.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Thank you, Scott. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. We're very, very glad that you're here. Tonight is part of actually a three-part series. So last month, for those of you who were with us and just need a review, or if this is your first time here in a bit, last year we covered like how you respond to the press, like what you do, how you share your plight, fight, and insight, and practicing it, and what would be good ways to respond to questions from the press. This part of the three-part series will be taking a look at earned media and what it is, why it's important. And for the last part in our series, we'll do a training on documentation. And by documentation, I mean taking pictures, recording, doing video, capturing your event, not just your day of action event, but maybe with a focus on your day of action event, but also tools and skills you can use to document other events, because as we're going to learn, we really want to get our stories out there, our narratives out there. And so that will be part 3. We'll get into the fundamentals of that documentation piece. So before we dig in, I'm just going to explain a couple of words, read a couple of definitions. What do we mean? What do we mean when we say earned media? Earned media can also be called free media. It's content relating to a person or an organization which is published by a third party without any form of payment to the publisher. So these aren't ads, these aren't PSAs that are being purchased, these aren't any kind of media that we have somehow paid for. We're also going to talk a little bit later, you're going to hear the term legacy media. And this refers to mass media institutions, just mass media in general, that dominated prior to the internet. And in particular, we'll be talking about like print media, radio broadcasting, television. So those kind of major forms of media that predated the internet. So why is earned media important? Well, I am guessing everyone in here is fairly aware of the fact that there is a media whiteout on poverty, a media whiteout on the experiences of those on the margins, the media whiteout on those experiencing the Medicaid cutoffs. Our poverty and issues related to poverty are not frequently covered. And when they are, they're not covered from a working class perspective or in a way that advances the working class perspective. So I'm going to show two slides really quick. Apologies now for the poor quality of these slides. This is not my strength, y'all. But if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so these are just two headlines of things that were covered over and over and over in the press. 31 outrageous and iconic celebrity moments that define the Met Gala. Venice expects to rake in 1.1 billion from that Bezos Sanchez wedding. So these were things that dominated the media, that took the place of the stories that kept our stories from getting out. And even when you look at healthcare and you search healthcare or you try to find stories about healthcare in the news, it's often not coming from our perspective and our theory of change. If we can just quickly show the next slide. So these are hard to see, but I did a quick search of just stories that happened. These are all of these are headlines from the last couple of days. And I just did Medicaid in the news. And what dominated the news cycle was like this top one, this Minnesota DHS defends Medicaid fraud crackdown. It was all about the fraud crackdown. And again, we know this is one of the ways that narratives divide us, that marginalize us, that victimize us, that really present a false narrative. What to know, the Wall Street Journal said, what to know about the government's $6.5 billion healthcare fraud crackdown. And as I scrolled through the stories from today, it was just Medicaid fraud, Medicaid fraud, Medicaid fraud. And we know that this is part of the agenda that they're trying to get out. They're trying to make it sound like our healthcare is expensive because we are abusing healthcare. We're abusing Medicaid. And we just know that's not the case, right? We just know that our healthcare isn't expensive because your neighbor is on Medicaid. So, and then lovely old AI, Indiana FSSA to use AI to detect Medicaid fraud, again, then combining the stories and erasing the healthcare burden through a glass box AI approach. And again, just AI. And why is that important? Because who owns and invests in the major AI companies, right? This is again, AI is something that is being invested again, invested in by the by our billionaires, right? By our working class, by the ruling class. Well, I'm having trouble with words tonight. So we can we just go back to the first slide? Yeah, thank you. So it is so important, as we've seen from these headlines, to get our stories out there. And I am going too slow, so I'm going to speed this up. Years ago, when I was in journalism school, they called topics like poverty, hunger, war permanent or evergreen stories. We were told as budding journalists that these stories, that the public wasn't interested and reading stories about these long, ongoing issues. We were literally discouraged from covering them. Now we see far more time, as we saw from these other slides, far more time being spent on things like the ballroom, the swampy reflecting pool, the Met Gala, things that have no connection to us, no connection to the experience of the vast majority, the millions and millions of people in this country. Maybe my professor was right. Maybe, but I don't think so. Maybe it's just that people are more interested and more engaged in stories that represent them and their struggles. Another quick reason for the whiteout on poverty, the whiteout on the actual healthcare experience, is the rising level of media consolidation. In 1983, 90% of American media companies were owned by 50 companies. Today, almost all media is controlled by 6 corporations: Comcast, Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Paramount, Skydance, Sony, and Amazon. Owners of local broadcast stations face the same rapid consolidation. With the latest Tegna-Nexstar merger approved by the FCC in March of this year, one company will now own 80% of U.S. TV watching households. They will cover those. 80%. Where media consolidation occurs, cost cuts and shortcuts often follow. And so local news gets substituted for what we call news duplication, stories that can be repeated and as is on multiple stations and multiple platforms. So our stories aren't being replicated, but these stories aren't. But these stories are. With the recent federal defunding of public radio, the viewpoints and stories being shared are becoming increasingly those of the wealthy, from the viewpoint of the wealthy ruling class. So let's get back just for a second, and I'm really out of time, to the idea of legacy media. We often think of legacy media as being obsolete. And I think I saw in a comment in the chat maybe that came up as I was speaking that talked about, yeah, but a lot of people don't watch TV anymore. And, people don't read newspapers. But so much of our social media is actually commenting and based on stories and perceptions that are being put out in these other forms of media. So while we may feel that legacy media is old and out of date, it is still very, very important. And if it weren't, the ruling class wouldn't be fighting to gobble it all up. So it's important that we keep that in mind as we go into these next steps, that newspapers, radio, even doing TV is so important to us getting our message out, to us changing the narrative. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Nijmi.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Wow, that was awesome. Please show some love for Kelly for that really important grounding. So good, so necessary. Thank you so much, Kelly. So as Kelly mentioned, right, tonight's national call is part of a 3-part series Last month was about telling our own story. Tonight is about breaking in to that media, what we call earned media. And next month will be about documenting our own story. So we're trying to hit all the points here, right? We're trying to make sure that we break that whiteout, right? Think of a blizzard. Think of a snow squall, right? Has anyone ever been in that where you can't see anything? And that is what is happening to our experiences and stories. And it was just so powerful, Kelly, when you said that that's actually what you were taught is, oh, nobody cares about that. And that's not something you report on. I'm sure that that's still continuing on today. And believe me, that is a strategic move on the part of the ruling class. It's not an accident. Um, and everything that we're talking about here tonight and in these three sessions about media in the Nonviolent Medicaid Army is part of a practice. And so tonight is not about getting it perfect. It's not about learning every single thing. It's not about having to have every single thing in place before you get started, right? It's about learning and trying things out and learning as you go, right? And that's how it is for all of these things. We learn as we go, right? Teach as we walk, all of that. So, um, I'm gonna move into the next part here about how to do a landscape assessment of your media environment, right? We actually did a Saturday school, I think, earlier this year, or a national call, but I think it was a Saturday school on landscape assessment, right? How do we learn what's going on around us? And this is a similar thing, learning what's going on around us in the context of our media and our press environment. So really appreciate Mark and Nick for doing tech tonight, and we can go and keep going to the next slide, please. So the way that you start to do your media landscape assessment is to take stock of the different print, web, TV, and radio outlets in your area. Could be in your town, your county, your city, your region. Sometimes they're organized around different kind of geographic spaces. So this is one on the bottom left. You see this screenshot of northcentralpa.com, which is a web outlet that focuses on North Central PA. Well, what is North Central PA? When you go to the site, you look at their about page, you'll see they kind of have a list of counties that they cover. So you know that if you're doing something in one of those counties, or you're doing something in another place, but it involves people from one of those counties, that's an outlet that you could put on a list that you develop of, okay, here's press that we want to reach out to. So you want to think about, how are these organized? Where are they, right? Where you are. There could be a very local paper, a neighborhood paper. There could be a paper that covers the town. There could be a TV station that covers the region, right? And then you want to think about the kinds of articles that they're writing, that they're producing, the kind of coverage that they're producing. And we don't want to just look at things like strictly about healthcare or Medicaid. Remember what Kelly just said. We're in a landscape of media consolidation. We're in a landscape where we're in a landscape of AI content production. And so it's not really a situation always where there's a specific reporter who covers healthcare and that's all they do, right? That's not really the situation anymore. But you can look for things, not only healthcare, but things about welfare, things about poverty, things about climate change, right? Things about jobs, things about local government, right? Who's kind of reporting on these issues that relate to the working class in some way, right? You don't have to narrow down your scope so much. So those are some of the first things that you want to do is to start to make a list, a simple list, doesn't have to be totally comprehensive, of what are some of the print and web and TV and radio outlets, what is their scale, right? Where do they cover? And then what kinds of articles are they producing? What kinds of content are they producing that relate to anything that's connected to healthcare, which we know a lot of things are. They could be talking about food insecurity. They could be talking about, what's happening in the region, pollution. They could be talking about any kind of things like that. So, and I have an example of that, for instance, on the bottom left, which is a headline from an outlet called Spotlight PA. And the title is, "This PA dentist treats thousands of patients from multiple rural counties. What will happen when he retires?" Now, this is not, specifically talking about legislation around adult dental benefit and Medicaid, and it's not talking about it from a systemic point of view necessarily, right? It's taking this very specific kind of angle, but hey, it counts, right? This is a reporter that we may want to reach out to and say, thank you for covering this issue of rural healthcare and dentists. Here's what we do, right? Like we're actually an organization that fights for dental care. So we can keep going. Thank you so much. So, as I just mentioned, as you're doing this kind of media landscape assessment, figuring out who's out there, right? What are the different outlets? Who's writing this stuff? Like, what is being produced? You can start setting up a very simple press list on a spreadsheet, on Google Forms, in a document, on whatever form you use. If you want to do it by hand, you can do it by hand. And remember, as I mentioned, there may not be someone writing specifically about healthcare, but you're looking for things that are related. And so what you see on the bottom of this is just a screenshot of one of the documents we use in PA that lists the outlet on the left, the type of media that it is, the contact name of the reporter, the beat, or what they generally write about, their email, their social media accounts, their phone number, and some notes. So here we also even have like maybe some links to articles that they wrote or coverage of us, right? That's where we can also be tracking this. So this is an example. And, again, this is just has a few different things on it. It doesn't have to be super, super complicated. The most important thing is just to get started. And we can keep going. So as I mentioned before, a press list is something that you build over time. It doesn't have to be complete or perfect in order to get started. In fact, please don't wait. It's a living document that you'll update consistently. You can build on it as you go, because also media workers move on. They move between different outlets and sometimes they go into other things. And so contacts will become outdated. So you'll have to kind of keep up with it. So again, it's not going to be comprehensive and perfect before you start, but you can use your spreadsheet to track coverage and engagement too. So as you build out your list, you can have a little thing by that row that says, oh, I checked in with them on this date, or this is the last article they wrote, or this is their last coverage with us, or they reached out to us on this date looking for sources for their story. Another thing that can help you to track things in the news is to set up something called a Google Alert. And this is something that allows you to input keywords that then will result in you getting, notifications basically in your email when something pops up. Like, so for example, we have a Google Alert for Put People First PA, because when we pop up in the news, we want to know that. We may not like get it right away, so we want to actually be alerted to it. Sometimes you can also set up Google Alerts for things like Medicaid cuts or other things, right? And there's ways to do it so that you make it specific enough that you don't just get bombarded with everything. And that's something that we can talk about more and help people with if that's something that you need. But that's where you can sign up for it, google.com/alerts. And this is just an example of a Google alert where, we got tagged in the news. And that's a way that can help you to see where you're showing up, but also to see where different key themes and keywords are showing up too. And lastly, I think this might be my last slide. Just want to say, don't screen out local affiliates because of their political leanings, right? You may think, oh, well, this outlet is affiliated on this way, this outlet is affiliated on this way. They're never going to cover us. They're never going to listen to us. but actually local affiliates of larger national outlets are often just like part of the local landscape, just like anything else. And they're out there to cover what's going on, just like anyone else. They're not going to necessarily just screen something out because it looks like, oh, these people are talking about healthcare as a human right. Okay, we're never going to talk to them. That we definitely haven't found that at all. So this, for example, is a hit that we got in the media from a couple of years ago from a local Fox affiliate talking about our work in South Central PA. So, of course, we train ourselves to be able to engage with media coming at us from different angles. And that was the media and spokesperson training that we did last month. But remember to, really reach out and cast a broad net when you're doing it. Don't screen something out because you think, oh, they're not going to cover us, because especially if it's a local affiliate, that's probably not the case.
Thank you, Nijmi. I'm taking it from you. Awesome. So appreciate the presenters so far. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Nijmi, everyone who set us up. My name's Jamie. I'm with Put People First PA and part of the Nonviolent Medicaid Army media team. Tammy, who will introduce themselves in a moment, and I are going to talk about building press relationships. So what do you do once you have this list of contacts? Nijmi already got at some of it, but as we know with our organizing, that relationships are at the heart of everything we do. People take action because of relationships, and the same thing applies to getting press to cover our work. So you can go to the next slide for me. Thank you, Tech. On the slide, there's a picture of me talking to a local reporter at a people's clinic a few years back from Delco Times. And so I'm going to go over 3 pieces. So reach out, be a resource, and just say yes. So the first piece, reach out. As Nijmi was getting at before, we want to make sure we're tracking reporters and their articles. So maybe that's because you just saw, you got a Google alert to your email. And you're going to then reach out to that reporter when they've written an article related to your issues. So write healthcare, welfare, poverty, and you can find their info either on your press list, via the article, or through some internet sleuthing. And then you'll reach out to them over email or potentially social media like X or Twitter. So 3 things when you reach out to them. First, you want to thank them for your article, for their article. Reference the name of the article in the email or the message that you send them. Show them you've taken time to learn about their work. Number 2, you want to take the opportunity to introduce the Nonviolent Medicaid Army. And 3, you want to let them know that in the future, you and the NVMA can be a resource or a source on these issues. And you can even offer a chat to chat more over coffee or a phone call. And so to say a bit about the second point, be a resource. Part of developing the relationship with press is about being a resource. So that doesn't mean that you have to be an expert on on the topic, but it's good to be a reliable, factual source about what's going on and able to connect the reporter to people with firsthand experiences of what they're reporting around. And it's important for us to remember that, okay, just making sure. It's important for us to remember that journalists and reporters, they're part of our class and they're hyper exploited. So they're constantly being forced to take on more work. Oh my Lord, that was already my time. Okay, I'll keep it real quick. They're constantly being forced to cover the next thing. So if you're an informed resource that can connect them with information and people and make it easier for them to cover us and do their job, we'll get better results. And then the final point is just say yes. Maybe you feel anxious about doing an interview. Maybe you're like, no, this is a source or an outlet no one reads. No, just say yes. You don't know what will come of it. You have the support of the NVMA, and it's good leadership development for you. And I'm going to pass it over to Tammy to take us through a couple more points on this. And you can go to the next slide.
Meets Jamie. Sorry, my dog just decided to bark as I started talking. Give me a second. um, yes. So first, every opportunity is a base building opportunity, right? So if they're members of our class, you can use this as an opportunity to get out our narrative out, but also move the individual reporters, right? It won't happen with every reporter. But like I asked questions, I listened to them as they shared. And through that, I learned what it's like for them. I built relationships over extended periods of time. Most of the relationship building happened over an extended hospital flight, like around Saving St. Joe's. We were a very visible presence in that fight for a couple of years. So we became a source they would go to. We'd be at the actions they were covering, and we'd recognize them at events and go up to them and ask how they're doing. So essentially using the interviews as opportunities to make a contact, but also to build relationships by following up in other ways. I also looked up journalists online, friended them on Facebook, send them messages, which would lead to real relationships. I think of Shelby and Andrew when they were with ABC 27. They interviewed us a few times. Each time we engaged in an organizing conversation that incorporated political education. We told them about Mother Jones, which piqued their curiosity to learn more. And Shelby shared her personal experiences. And we discovered she was one of our neighbors. Tim, once with LNP and One United Lancaster, him and I have had many great organizing conversations about the system, the things impacting our community and beyond. Very, very deep conversations. And I learned so much even from him too. And sometimes we would just meet for coffee or downtown at the square just to chat. But sometimes it happens in reverse. I think of when I met Pat from the Bucks County Beacon while meeting, when working with her and Pastor Matt Best and the Philly Homeless Union chapter on partnering with the Memorial Blanket Project in 2024. I found out during that call that she was also a reporter. And since then, she covered us on a few occasions. But essentially, I met her while partnering for a Winter Offensive event versus an interview for a story. And so I just want to say that if we're building a movement made up of our class, that we should think about that when connecting with reporters.
I think we're passing it to Peyton next for a New York case study. Thank you, Tammy.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Peyton, and I get to highlight the Food and Poverty Speak Out that we recently hosted in New York. And for this event, we were also joined by Reverend Dr. Leslie O'Hara from the Cairo Center. And so these are some pictures from that event. And I can go, or we can go to the next slide. So the event itself was an opportunity for folks in our network to share their stories, and we had a few goals with press coverage for this event. One is to get press to actually cover the event, of course. We also wanted to highlight leadership and testimony of our members who are part of our Community Advocates program, which is based in the Rotterdam Community Center. The community center serves as a base of operations for us because there are 2 pantries that we canvass regularly, and it's also a really good place to host our events. And the third is to develop the leadership skills of our members to do more press work in the future. So next slide. So our press plan followed the standard, pretty standard press plan. like Nijmi mentioned, we have our press list. And so we already reviewed that. So I'm not going to go into that too much, but ours has also grown over time. Then we have our media advisory, which is sent before the event or like the moment in time that you're looking to circle around. And then we had a bit of a unique part of our plan, which is not standard, which is a press avail, which I'll get into more later. Then we also do the morning calls, and we did a press release, which we sent after as a follow-up. So we'll start by talking through the media advisory. So we can go to the next one. So I like to think of a media advisory as literally like a children's birthday invitation, where it's like the who, what, where, when, like this is how you get in contact. And you'll notice it sort of actually looks like that. So I put a copy or a picture to the side of what our media advisory actually looked like. So what's highlighted in yellow is that who, what, where, when, why pieces. And those are a lot more just logistic details that are important for anyone in the press to just quickly look and see. And then what's highlighted in the blue is where you get a little more editorial. And in a few sentences, you want to communicate what you can and why this is newsworthy and how it is timely. And like Kelly mentioned, these are what you want to do to be able to get through the cracks to make it seem like, or to make it more timely, I guess. So some tips that can help you get your media advisory to like stand out or to be seen is being very clear and succinct. Like I said, having that like when, where, why, who, very clear. In your subject line, include the word advisory and then the title of your event or the title of the advisory. Put the advisory in an email. So you literally just copy and paste it from whatever document and just paste it into the email. When I first did that, I thought, I was like, this is so bizarre. Why is it like this? I thought it would be like an attachment or some sort of form that you fill out. Just a body of an email, send it out. And then you'll BCC your whole press list because you don't want to start this big email chain where everyone's responding. So BCCing the whole press list, but also, as mentioned before, reaching out to press that you know individually and have built relationships on is also really helpful to do once you have your media advisory. Personally, I found that like when you send out that BCC email, the giant one, then to your whole press list, and then following up by forwarding that larger email to people that you have specific contacts with, or then following up and highlighting it via text or phone call, whichever way, like however you're communicating with the people that you have relationships with. Okay, and then we can go to the next slide. Oh, also, this is a copy of the media advisory. If you click on, sorry, I should have one tech team. I linked the copies of the like an example of our press release in there. So the next or the unique thing that we did here was also having a press avail, which is the opportunity to interview key leaders before the event. And so we asked folks to RSVP if they were going to participate in that, and also offered a Zoom option. And we actually did have a reporter respond and attend. So we were able to speak with them for an extended period of time, and they interviewed a bunch of us together in a room on the overall program and the event. And they ended up pushing their editor to have it as a Sunday feature in their paper. So that is a huge success. And also, like, it was written and based around the like interview itself and not necessarily the press release. So they had, which we'll get into later, which is normally what happens after an event like this. So that was unique and super cool. Okay, we can go to the next one, but fair warning, it is linked also. Sorry. Okay, so the timeline for like sending out a media advisory, just to point this out, is typically we'll send a media advisory out a week ahead of time. And so like this week, our event was on June 11th. So we send the media advisory out a week ahead of time and then 2 days ahead of time. And then on the day of the event, send it out again, and also make some phone calls, which we'll talk about next. And then sending out the press release after the event. And then if you can also send it out the day after as well. Okay, we can go to the next one. So the morning calls, the morning of your event, making some press calls to a more narrow group of reporters is super helpful to get folks to come on the day of. And so we made press calls to 6 main outlets near us at like around 7 a.m., 8 a.m. being usually when the newsroom assigns stories out for the day. And if someone answers, you want to make sure, have you received the media advisory? And if they have, then you want to make sure to ask them, are they planning on attending? And if they haven't received the media advisory, you want to make sure that they get the media advisory. And if they are planning on attending, mark it down, talk to other folks that you're organizing. But most folks won't actually know yet because they are going to be assigned their assignments at the like 8 a.m. meeting or but mostly this is highlighting the event and hopefully bumping it for them, bringing it to their attention. And we ask them to contact us if they plan on attending, but that's mostly a courtesy. Don't necessarily expect them to call us in advance, but if they do, that allows us to prepare for them a little more. So that's always good. And like I said, for this event, we did get a reporter to cover it. Any coverage is really good because you're breaking through the wall of people not covering this and poverty and all of the issues that we talk about. And there are also a lot of reasons why journalists may not cover things, and they are typically out of our control. And it kind of depends on the rest of the news that's happening that day. If they have a particular theme or topic that they're focusing on, the rest of the news happening, and general whiteouts on issues of poverty, healthcare, and working class perspective. So it's an uphill battle. And the fact that we were able to break through and the Sunday edition, pretty cool. So next, we'll talk a bit more about the press releases. So press releases, I personally saw it as a bit more intimidating because it's less of that invitation style of a document. And we typically try our best to prepare this in advance to the event, because once the event starts, it's kind of hard to get all this stuff sorted. But the press release goes out afterwards because you don't want to give away. I was told, like, when I first started doing this, like, you don't want to give them everything before they come because then they may not want to come. So the things that are highlighted in blue here are, again, those editorial points. So like 2 to 4 sentences, keeping it super simple. But most of the press release is quotes, which you should definitely try your best to solicit in advance. One of the tips I have here is get your quotes from your speakers as they confirm that they're speaking. It makes it way easier than having to chase them down like the day or two before the event when you're trying to also sort out all of the other things that are happening in the event. And then at the end, I like to include logistical details like a little about us, and super helpful to include like a link to the live stream and photos that can be found. And you'll see like we linked a drive for the photos, which was also helpful because we could have that link ready and like ready to go before the event actually even happened, so that when we try to print it afterwards, try to print it before the event, we still have those links that are there and ready and able to be shared before the event, even though it's something for after the event. And trying to get as much as you can done prior to the event, even like if it's not finished and final, but having it in a polished enough state that you have something to give them, to give any press that show up is really helpful. Also, I want to note, doing your best to follow AP style. This is the standard style of news and writing and reporting. And there's books about it. It's updated every year, and it takes a lot of practice to really know that style. But if you read and watch enough news, you'll kind of get an idea of what that style looks like, and you can try your best to replicate it. There's a ton of guides that you can just Google like AP style and see the like standard suggestions on how to write numbers or like state names and things like that. But also, if you have people that are within your network that are professional or experienced writers or editors, please lean on them. And honestly, even if you don't, it's always good to have more folks read through them. And because the less editing that the journals have to do, the better. And if you're not confident on your writing skills, that's okay. But just keeping it as simple as you can is fine. Having a few quotes compiled is helpful on its own, and then have time to practice. Once you continue doing this, the more and more you do this, the more confident that you'll feel. And also doing it with a larger group with that you're organizing with is also helpful, and it will make it a lot easier to continue doing it in the future. But also, like folks had said before, just trying it and it will get better. It's better to do it now and to like wait until you feel like it's perfect, or you feel like you're like the best at doing this. And just to note the question in the chat, yes, definitely giving press releases to folks even if they don't show, because we have had events where press doesn't show but they still cover this, because the press release is ideally what you want out of the press release is sometimes that the press will just take the release and copy and paste it into like their news, like if it's a written news, then they might just like copy and paste large portions of it and publish it, which is good, and that's fine. That's what we want. So we want to also be thinking about like this is pretty much meant to be copied and pasted, so you want to make sure it's nice and rounded and looks good. Okay, next slide. The last thing to note is that you want to also make sure that you have at least one person, ideally two people, at your event as a dedicated press liaison. So they're there to introduce themselves to any press. They're the person providing a copy of the press release, or if you don't have a printed copy available, then you would be making sure that and even if you do have a printed copy, you want to make sure you're exchanging contact information, so that you have the press person's contact info. They also have yours. And you also want to make sure to offer to connect them with our members to be able to set up interviews and directing them to who to talk to, because it can be a little confusing if they just start asking people in general. And then the last bit is just to make sure to be friendly, and this is a relationship building opportunity. And we also, for us specifically with this event, we had a lot of people helping to plan the event who have never done press work before. And so this was a really good opportunity for our folks to learn how to do it and be well positioned before we come up and bring more folks into planning press work in the upcoming day of action. And that should be everything.
Thank you, Peyton. Yeah, that was a ton of info, and you went through it very succinctly and clearly. Yeah, thank you for the appreciations in the chat. And we will make sure that everyone gets, the slides and the recording of this if you register for the call afterwards, so that you can return to this. What we're going to do now is we're just a few minutes behind, but we're going to still have about 15 minutes in our breakout groups. And we are mostly going to be split up by state. There's a few exceptions. That's okay. But what we're going to do is there's going to have some time for reflections just on things that have emerged through all of these amazing presentations that you've heard so far, as well as an opportunity to start thinking through some of these tasks together. Our Nonviolent Medicaid Army National Day of Action is going to be on September 19th. It's June 25th. That is just under 3 months away. Maybe that feels like a long time, it's going to be here really soon. The really good news, though, is so many of the things that we just learned about, we're talking through, are ongoing processes and relatively small steps that you can and should begin taking today with your collectives, right? With your organization as we're getting towards that day of action. So each group should have identify someone as a note taker. And there's this really great document. I'm going to drop the link in the chat real quick that we want you to make a copy of. Let me just put this in here. Yeah, make sure you make a copy. Don't edit the core document. And you can take some notes there. And also want to note that we have an amazing Nonviolent Medicaid Army media team who bottom line this whole call. And you don't have to invent this stuff from scratch, right? Like we have a experienced group of organizers who are here to support you in this work. But you got to take some steps, right? Like just a couple. Take one or two, try something new, and then say, oh, here are the questions that are coming up. Here's what help I need. All right. So we've got small group facilitators who are going to guide you through this conversation. It's going to be great. And we'll be back in about 15 minutes. Folks, 15 minutes is never enough time. With our last couple minutes, we'd love to hear like 1 or 2 popcorn responses. Did somebody in your group have a really good insight that would be good to share with the group? I also want to invite folks to drop something that was notable to you in the chat. That's really beneficial for everybody. But we just got a few minutes, so maybe like 2, even 3 comments briefly. I'm actually going to, I cannot see with the screen share. Can you stop the screen share for now? Actually, that's cool. And then I'm going to remove my spotlight so I can see in case anyone raises their hand or try to get in there. 1 or 2 thoughts, yeah.
Joe, Michael put something in the chat.
Awesome. Michael mentioned press contacts as base building. Yeah, spot on. I was thinking about that while Tammy was talking as well. Sorry, I'm removing the spotlight just so that I can see everybody. Clarissa mentioning we talked about looking into local and borough media outlets in New York City because New York City is such a huge list. If you tried to assess all of them, it's rapidly overwhelming. What else? Any other thoughts? It was a lot of info, and I'm hoping you feel like, cool, there's at least like 1 or 2 steps I can take here, right? Like, because all this stuff adds up to a big picture, but yeah, I'm seeing some thumbs. Awesome. Cool. Anybody want to just chime in something you're feeling excited about doing on some of those steps? Yeah, Nico.
I'm really excited about reaching out to media outlets and sort of coordinating with our folks on how best to do that going forward. I think it's just really valuable. And also reaching out to them, not just as like, what can we do for each other, but as genuinely building relationships as members of each other's class in solidarity.
Right on. Joy, did I see you come off mute there? Yeah.
I want to shout out to Jamie because she just posted that she wanted to share something that was in Orlo group. So I'm going to pass it over to Jamie.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy. I just wanted to appreciate our group. There were just really good insights, both like Robin and Joe, especially voicing like, oh, I'm excited to do this work. Like they had both, or Joe had already started to look up a local outlet and was talking about like this, like, the press are no different than us. Like we shouldn't be intimidated by them. It's like going to the welfare office. Like this is our, it's our responsibility and right to get this coverage. So I just loved it.
Spot on. Well, thanks everybody. Really glad folks are getting some good stuff out of this. And more to come. There's lots more to do. I'll just highlight again. We've got a rockin' media team. You heard from most of them. Most of the media team was here tonight. And so, yeah, as you're moving forward in this work, everything we do has got to be collective, right? Like this ain't solo stuff. So make sure you're talking to other folks in whatever your organizing formation is, and know that you've got support here. If you've got questions, if you're encountering a challenging situation, or you're not sure how to respond in some way, right? Like we got lots of folks who are down to help you with this. And it's important for all of us that the NVMA breaks through that media whiteout wherever we are in the country, right? Like I want to do it really well in Albany, but I want to hear about the Indiana news coverage. I want to hear about Ohio. I want to hear about Wisconsin, right? Like, so it's helpful for all of us when we can do this well together. Loving some other awesome comments in the chat, but with our last 2 minutes, I'm going to kick it to Kelly to talk about some upcoming events and close us out.
Hey, y'all. Yeah, thanks so much for all your amazing participation. If this is your first meeting with us, please make sure you connect with us. We want to make sure that you are connected to your state. We want to make sure you feel loved and welcomed and that we answer any questions that you have. We have lots of good stuff, as always, folks, coming up. The next Saturday School of Struggle, you can't think your way out of poverty, but is July 11th, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Forgive all my AMs and PMs. Pacific. The next national call, and these are, as always, are on the fourth Thursday of the month, will be on July 23rd. And this, as we talked about, this is going to be the third in the series. So we're really going to dig in deep into documentation and giving tips on how to document your events. And that's at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, and 4 p.m. Pacific. Share your stories with Medicaid Mondays. Y'all, this is a really important part of how we break this media whiteout too. We can get our stories out now with Medicaid Mondays. So there's a Medicaid Mondays form if you go to our website, and all of this is being dropped, I think, into the chat, or will be. You can submit one there. You can submit one through your state. Just get us your Medicaid Monday stories. And if you have questions about those, reach out to us. You can get help with SNAP, work requirements. There's a link that we can send, and spread the word on social media. We talked a lot about earned media and legacy media, but social media is important too. So spread the word. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So now you know what we're gonna do, y'all. Everybody come off mute.
I'm ready.
All right.
All right.
I like
Here
that
I am.
spirit. That's what we need. We need some energy. I like that spirit. All right, I'm going to say, who are we? And then you do your thing, all right? Who are we?
The
The
Medicaid Army.
Who are we?
The Medicaid Army.
Who are we?
The Medicaid
Army. I heard some pets getting involved too, so that's wonderful.
That's
Thank
right,
you all.
animals.
Thanks so much.
Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
Have a
Night,
great night,
everyone.
And you're
everyone.
locked out.
If you're
Bye.
part
Peace
of
be with
the
you all.
thread for this, stay on. We'll keep
Bye.
the session.
You're fine. You're
Bye.
here with me. I'll text them.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Bye.